Hello, I'm Alyssa. I'm the Director of Outreach and Community Engagement at Turning Point Domestic Violence Agency. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and today we have this video to explain a little bit more about healthy relationships, dating violence, and domestic violence. Turning Point was founded in 1981 by a group of women when back in the 80s there wasn't really places to turn when dealing with domestic violence or violence at home. They founded an organization within their homes with a crisis line and emergency shelter, and 42 years later, we still have those services today and have expanded quite a bit into a bunch of different services that I'll go over at the end of the presentation. So why are we talking about teen dating violence and dating violence in this month? 1 in 3 teens are going to be a survivor of domestic violence. 1.5 million high school students are going to experience physical abuse from a dating partner in a single year. 1 in 5 victims say they have experienced digital harassment during school hours, but they say most takes place away from school. And 81% of parents believe teen dating abuse is not an issue or admit they didn't know it was one. Teen dating violence especially is much more hidden, just like domestic violence, and it's something we just don't talk about in the community. So before we even dive into what is dating and domestic violence, let's talk a little bit about what a relationship is. Think to yourself, what are some relationships in your life that you have examples, good and bad? Relationships are going to cover any relationship we have in our life, maybe it's friends, partners, significant others, family members. And are all those relationships in our lives healthy, or are they in those unhealthy categories? What are some qualities that you look for in healthy relationships? Do they have trust? Are they funny? Are they good listeners, thoughtful? One of my biggest ones is all my relationships that feel safe. What about when we're talking about dating relationships? Most dating relationships are going to fall on the spectrum that we get from loveisrespect.org, an awesome website with tons of information. Primarily, we want to be in that healthy relationship category. We're communicating, we're trusting, we're equal. Unhealthy, we're going to start getting into that distrust, not communicating, and only spending time with each other. We're abusive, we're going to get into that mistreatment, like there might be no communication there, and there could be very controlling. So when we're talking about dating violence, domestic violence, or intimate partner violence, they all have the same definition, which is the willful intimidation and abusive behaviors as part of a pattern of power and control from one intimate partner against another. Domestic violence is intentional. It's a repeat pattern of behaviors. They're going to employ multiple tactics for the purpose of gaining power and control over the survivor. It intentionally destroys someone's self-esteem and self-worth. It's not caused by substance misuse. There's a common misconception that they only do things when they're drunk or high. The abuse is always happening, but it might be escalated when they're drunk or high. It's also passed down through generations. So if you only witness or experience abusive relationships growing up, you're much more likely to end up in one yourself. It's also rooted in the issues of social justice and gender inequality. So even though we're seeing more and more male victims, we still know that this is going to affect women at a higher rate. But it also does not discriminate. So people of any race, age, gender, sexuality, religion, education level, or economic status can be a survivor or perpetrator of domestic violence. There's also a lot of different types of abuse. I think most of the time when we see it portrayed in media or when we think in our heads, we think of physical violence, which physical violence is going to cover hitting, kicking, punching, anything physically harming someone's body. Some people call it choking. We want to use the word strangulation if somebody is putting their hands around your neck. So this also is going to cover damaging or dismantling someone's property. So punching holes in walls, breaking things, throwing things, threatening to cause harm, or punching a hole in the wall behind somebody. Also engaging in any sort of reckless driving is going to be under physical. You'll see that these tend to play into each other because a threat to cause harm could also be under verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is going to be belittling someone by swearing, demeaning, putting them down, yelling, or arguing. Mental abuse is also known as gaslighting or manipulation. With mental abuse, it's going to make the survivor feel like they're going crazy by tricking them, deceiving them into believing what the perpetrator is believing. Financial abuse is going to be having all that control over the money in a couple different ways. Either the perpetrator can be making all of the money and not allowing the survivor to have any, or the perpetrator can be having the survivor make all the money and taking it. Also going into their work or causing harm to their job by calling them, showing up, things like that. Sexual abuse is going to be consent or not. We always want to make sure we're asking for consent. we're having conversations, and we're not making anyone feel forced or pressured into anything sexually in a relationship. Stalking and digital go hand in hand these days. We still see stalking with people following or harassing them, but most of the time this will be done with location sharing apps, different stalkerware apps, finding their locations, following them on social media, things like that. Domestic violence does also happen at a higher rate in the LGBTQIA+ community. They're going to have the same types of abuse, but there are going to be some things that are slightly different. We see a lot of threatening to out the victim and saying that they're going to say their identity. So say, for instance, my partner is a lesbian and they're not out to their family yet, I could threaten to out them to their family. In any domestic violence relationship, we're going to be in the cycle of violence most of the time. The cycle of violence is different stages or phases within the relationship. Primarily, you're going to be in the tension phase where you feel like everything's going wrong, you feel like you're walking on eggshells, you feel like everything has to be perfect. Then you're going to get into the crisis phase, which is some sort of bigger situation or bigger types of abuse in the tension. There's going to be abuse happening in the tension phase, and then the crisis is going to escalate. Then we're going to get back down to the calm phase. There's going to be a lot of love bombing, which looks like gift giving, apologizing, saying you're doing these things because I love you, saying you're sorry, I'll get help. And then we're right back into the tension phase. The majority of domestic violence survivors will leave an abusive partner 7 to 12 times before they leave for the last time. And they'll continue through this cycle over and over again. Next, I have this short video that's going to show the cycle of violence and also some of the types of abuse that we see most often in the teen world.
Because I love you. I want to be your only guy.
Because I love you, skip class with me. Let's stay in bed today.
Because I love you, I just want to be with you so freaking much.
Because I love you.
I waited for you after Chem Lab.
You were walking with Mark?
Because I love you.
You shouldn't be hanging out with that dude.
You should know how dumb that makes me look.
I don't care if she's your lab partner.
Why do you have texts from him?
Because I love you. This number,
Delete.
Because I love you. This Jason number?
delete.
And Ben,
Delete.
because I love you, I should smash your phone.
I'll let you give me your password instead.
Because I love you.
I will check your texts every day.
You got lucky. Because I love you.
Because I love you.
You think it's okay.
Because I love you. You understand.
Because I love you. You stopped talking to your classmates. And you feel completely alone.
Because I love you. That's not love.
As you guys could see in this video, there's so many subtle things that happen, and it doesn't always have to be something big. A lot of relationships aren't going to have giant red flags telling you this is abuse or this is wrong. It's going to be little things, like as they started to ask, who are you walking with? Who's your lab partner? Who do you have text from? And in this video, our attention to crisis was as simple as the phrase, I'm going to smash your phone, but you can give me your password instead. That threat of violence, which would be physical abuse, changes from that tension of just questioning and asking. As we went back, they said, it's because I love you. You think it's okay. And because I love you, I'm going to continue to do these things. So a lot of times I get the question, well, why do people stay in relationships? You live in a very victim-blamed society, and this is usually the question we get asked. Why do people stay? There's so many reasons. All these reasons on the screen are reasons I've heard being out in the community and being on our crisis line. Big ones are children, love, they believe that it's normal, how will people react, they're not ready to leave, peer pressure, family pressure, worrying about what will happen with their immigration status or threats, they have a disability. And after a while, you have all these reasons to stay. We call this the birdcage scenario. After a while, all those bars around you are reasons to stay, and it's much harder to leave when you have so many reasons to stay. I also like to ask the question of why people stay. We also have to be asking the question of why people abuse or choose to use harm in their relationships. Because abuse is a learned behavior, people tend to. Most of the time, people have witnessed or experienced abuse growing up and end up becoming an abusive partner. As I said before, just because drugs and alcohol can escalate the abuse does not mean the person is choosing to do harm. Here at Turning Point, we have a program called the Partner Abuse Intervention Program. And that program actually helps people relearn how to be in a relationship and not to use harm in their relationship. Whenever we're talking about domestic violence or situations and healthy and unhealthy relationships, we have to talk about our boundaries and things that we can work on and things that we can work through and let our partners know our boundaries as we get together. We can have all different kinds of boundaries, including physical, emotional, digital, sexual. They can change as we get older, stay the same with more experience. We cannot decide other people's boundaries. We can only decide ours. We might have different influencing factors like our family, religion, media, or other experiences. And they might be different. They might be different with our family than they are with our friends. During the pandemic, I learned I'm not much of a hugger. I always thought I was, but I learned I didn't really enjoy it very much. So after the pandemic, when people would ask me, can I have a hug? I started to say things like, you know what, I would prefer a high five or a handshake. I realized very quickly by just setting a boundary for myself of something I'm not comfortable with, that most people were totally okay with it. And now I have a lot of people that ask or just go ahead with a high five or a handshake. As I said, you got to set your boundaries and you got to enforce your boundaries. So what traits or behaviors do you like in other relationships? How do you want to spend your time? And what may not be giving you that time to be spent? Using I statements, not you statements. As I said, if someone asks me, do I want a hug? And I just say, no, that's not going to effectively communicate my needs. But say, I actually don't like hugs, but I would love a handshake. It's a very easy way to keep that on me and keep that as an I statement. And also make sure that you can enforce your boundaries. Having a conversation with someone that says, they hug me without asking, and say, hey, I really don't like hugs. Can you please be mindful of that next time? Instead of just saying something like, I'm never going to touch you again if you don't listen to me. Having those boundaries and actually clear consequences for those boundaries. A lot of times when we're in a relationship, there might be come a point where we need to break up with them. Ending an unhealthy relationship is much different than ending a healthy one. If you're ending a healthy relationship, think about what you want to do before you do it. Breaking up in person is probably the best way to do it, and having conversations with your partner. If you want to be friends with them later on, don't talk trash about them, and make sure that you're continuing to have a good relationship with them. And if you're breaking up with someone who's been unhealthy or abusive in your relationship, the biggest thing that you need to do is think about your safety. Is it safe to break up in person? And if it's not, that's okay. Breaking up on the phone is fine. Don't re-explain your relationship for breaking up over and over again, and don't try to explain it too much, because anything you over-explain, they're going to try to use against you. Make sure that you're talking with friends or connecting with us at Turning Point, and making sure that you're saving any harassing or threatening messages, block them on social media, block their phone numbers, and if at any point you feel in danger, call 911. That's what they're there for. In the state of Illinois, we have some really cool rights that other states don't have. One of them being, if you're 12 years old or up, you can receive 8 90-minute counseling sessions on your own without parental consent or knowledge. Here at Turning Point, it'd be 8 50-minute sessions. And we're always happy to talk to anybody on our crisis line or helpline. No matter the age, you can give us a call and we can chat with you and give you some resources. Minors also have the ability to file an order of protection, but they have to have somebody 18 years or older with them. An order of protection is a piece of paper that is similar to a restraining order that tells somebody they cannot come near you or contact you. And lastly, Illinois law allows for help for schools to discipline for abuse happening outside the school if it interferes with one's education. So if a student that goes to the same school as you is starting to cause problems, you're able to actually contact the school and they can help with disciplining, especially if you're experiencing abuse from a fellow classmate. We have so many different services at Turning Point, including a 24-hour domestic violence helpline, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call and talk to us about what you're going through or experiencing, or if you have any questions. We have a safe, secure emergency shelter where people can stay 30 to 60 days for people that are actively fleeing domestic violence. We offer individual and group counseling for children, teens, and adults. Trauma-based mental health services, which is going to be that next step after our initial domestic violence counseling. Legal advocacy at the McHenry County Courthouse, so help filing those orders of protection. That partner abuse intervention program I already talked about. Programs for survivors who have chose to use harm. So they're not quite right for our victims program, not quite right for our partner abuse program. We have an in-between program. We have a parenting program and then outreach and prevention with myself and my team. My prevention team actually goes into schools and gives similar presentations all the way down to preschool through college on bullying, friendships, healthy relationships like you're seeing today, and Aaron's Law. If someone is bringing up to you that they believe that they're a victim of domestic violence, simple questions that you can say is you can believe them. Believing a victim or survivor is a huge help to them. They usually have felt like they're overreacting or maybe that this isn't real. So saying I believe you can be such a powerful statement. Giving them support, whatever that looks like for them. So maybe it talking to them, going to Turning Point with them, or the school counselor, or calling someone, and referring them to the right resources. Saying, hey, I actually know who to call, and I think that they can help you. There's so many great agencies in McHenry County. Us there at the top, the Northwest Care Center, if you're dealing with sexual abuse, the McHenry County Crisis Line, which is now switching over to 988, the wonderful McHelp app, and then there are some things outside of our county, including the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline, 988, the Warm Line, a lot of different resources. Here's that McHelp app again, which is such an awesome resource that we have here in McHenry County. You can call or text confidentially to a trained licensed mental health professional. If you have any other questions or concerns, or just wondering more about what Turning Point does, feel free to reach out to us to ask more questions. We're always happy to help, and you may see us in your school soon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your month.